Gamers, welcome back. If you haven't noticed, I've been uploading a lot of Dragon Kill videos and gameplay footage from this game. That's right, today is the review for Dragon Age Inquisitions. I have spent over 100 plus hours in this game doing side quests, exploring the world, and also playing it on the hardest difficulty, Nightmare. And I finally did the main story and finished the game completely. There are a couple side quests left in the game that an exploring I could do, but I'm going to save that for another time and do another run through of the game. Dragon Age Inquisition takes place a year after Dragon Age 2. You'll start off with a character, and you'll be briefed that there is a tear in the veil, which is the Fade. The demon world, your character has ruin in their hands and has the ability to close these rifts that appeared in the world. And from there, you'll be a part of the Inquisition to stop the tear and save the world itself. The plot of the game, after playing it and beating it, is quite decent. Now, if you don't know much about Dragon Age Origins, or if you've never played 2 before, you can actually go to Dragon Age Keep and create a save file from there. You do not need your save file from 1 and 2. The website takes in all the decisions you make and then put it in the new game itself. The story of Inquisition is pretty much based on the player's choice this time around, as usual. Depending on your minor and major choices, it affects the outcome of the game. There are 2 story arcs in the game. If you choose to side with the Templars, or if you choose to side with the Mages, and you'll get a different arc depending on what you pick. Also, to get this out of the way is the sound of the game. The voices in this game, the voice acting are top-notch. I've had no problems with any of them. The script, pretty decent in most places. It's really good. The music to the game is also very epic. As you can hear from the review videos, you'll be hearing some of the music. I'll put some samples in for you guys. But like I said before, there is a lot of lore in this game to tell you the story. There's books, there's codex, there's events that will tell you more of the story. There's a lot of chatting with the characters. You can actually learn more about certain events by talking to them. So there is a lot of lore in this game. So if you're a huge lore fan, you'll love that kind of stuff. There it is. It's there for you, and you can skip it if you want to, or leave a conversation in the middle of it if you don't want to listen to the whole thing. But the options is yours. Now, if you haven't noticed, I am playing the PC version of the game. I can actually turn up certain settings. I have the game on all ultra. I am using a 680 GTX. The game runs fairly well at a 55 to 58 FPS. I turn off multi-sampling because that's very taxing on my hardware. I don't have the hardware to support that. But the game runs fine at about 45, 50, sometimes 55 to 58 FPS, depending on where I am in the game. Some places are a little bit graphic intensive. The cutscenes in the game are limited to 30 FPS, so there's a huge problem with that at times. It definitely lags, but you can fix it with the command. I hope they do fix that because it ruins immersion for me. Now, one of the claims I've seen from people is that they are saying the controls are clunky, when they are absolutely ridiculously the same as Origins. WASD to move. The only thing gone from this game, honestly, is the way the camera pans around. The camera is done by holding the right mouse button and spinning your mouse around to actually spin the camera. The other thing that's gone is the auto attack button. A lot of people were complaining about, the game not having auto attack. The game does have an auto attack button, but it is not your mouse anymore because you have to hold your left mouse button to actually attack, or you have to hold the R button. The way you attack in this game with auto attack is going into the tactical view. Now, at first, honestly, the camera for the tactical view was really strange. It goes up and down, it elevates in weird ways. It doesn't zoom all the way out, which is fine because you can actually move the camera around the environment real easily. But the real problem was the controls for it felt weird. I pressed A and D and the camera would move in a weird way. And then I discovered that Q and E was actually how you would move the camera around. Some genius at BioWare thought it was a good idea to make Q and E as the buttons to actually move the camera around when it should have been A and D. So what I did was I went and keybound the Q and E to A and D, and I found that the camera was much easier to use. In fact, I've played this game 9 hours straight when using only the tactical view. The only thing I can't do with it is probably jump up to certain things in the game, but you can literally play the game in a tactical view if you want to. Observe, I will show you a video proving this. So during the tactical view, you can see that some of the clunkiness exists with the elevation because the camera moves in a certain weird way, but however you can control the camera and spin it around all over the battlefield in a limited range. The view could use some little bit of more work with the camera, but overall it is possible to auto attack in this game to those who says it doesn't exist. And also that entire fight was done with auto attack except for a few moves I pressed here and there. You can actually click on the time freeze, you can click on the skill moves if you want to, and you can pause anytime you want. So that mode right there exists. So unfortunately the keys are changed a little bit from Origins. I do love Origins, but the only difference I see is that the way you attack in this game is different. There's no auto attack, and people are making a huge deal out of it. Holding R to attack and auto attacking are almost the same lazy concept, to be honest with you. If you think about it, auto attacking, you don't press anything, you just right click, you're done. R button, you hold R, you're done. So I had no problems with that. It's almost exactly the same damn thing if you think about it. There are certain things about the combat that irks me, especially when finding items. You feel like a dolphin since you always have to press V to ping stuff. The pinging stuff gets really old real quick. I wish there was a button where you can just press once and you can see items pop up, such as the Alt button or something. You'll see the name of the item that you can loot. That's probably a much better idea, but as the V concept goes, it's alright, but you do feel like a dolphin most of the game when you go through dungeons and areas because you're constantly pressing the V button to find whatever. The other thing that bugs me about the game is the interface itself. I'm not a huge fan of the interface. I think it could have been done a lot better. The options to turning certain things off doesn't work real well. I wish there was more options to turn off, like such things as the mini-map, or certain things like the quest trackers, which I don't want on the screen because you have to turn off the active quest to turn it off. The interface itself could use a lot more work, especially when it comes to sorting your inventory. There's no sort inventory button, and there's no storage in the game. So when it comes to collecting a lot of items, I'll have a lot of stuff in my inventory, and it clutters up my entire inventory. When it comes to choosing what gear I want to keep or throw away, it's really hard to go through it. So what I do is I keep it simple. I go through the prices, I look at the things that are cheap, and I sell everything that's cheap and keep things that look valuable, such as the blues and purples, etc. Keep in mind, another tip is you don't want to sell everything in your valuables. I've made a mistake. I found out that some of the valuable stuff that are 1 gold or a certain amount of gold, there's a sell all button. Now, if you sell all of it, you're going to miss out on buffs and benefits in the game, such as turning in items to gain buffs against certain enemies. So you want to keep an eye on. Now we're going to get into the classes of the game. The classes are warriors, rogues, or mages. As a rogue, you can be an archer, or you can have a dual-wield rogue with daggers and sword. As a warrior, you can have a two-handed warrior, or a sword and shield. And mages get a bunch of elemental spells that they can invest in. That is pretty cool on the choices they can. Mages, however, only get one weapon type, which is the staff weapon. They do, however, get the really cool trees of different elements, such as fire, lightning, and ice, and also the spirit tree, which helps with the barriers in the group. Now, the specialization trees comes in the game later on at level 11. If you don't know what that is, basically, all the other characters are predetermined specialization. For example, Iron Bull can be a Reaver, and Cassandra is a Templar. You can choose your own character specialization tree. Your specialization tree, depending on what class you are, can be certain things. For example, my mage can be a Rift Wizard, he can be a Necromancer, or he can be a Templar Knights if you wanted to. So that comes in as a quest later on for you. Now in the game, as you can see, the buttons only go up to 8. That means that you can only choose 8 skills to have on your character at any given time. During combat, you can't switch out skills. So the only time you can switch out the skills is when you're not in combat. So you want to choose those skills carefully. What you want to do is go into passives more because they help a lot more in the... Which makes a lot of sense because you don't need all your skills in multiple HUDs at one time, since you can't go through all of them during one battle anyways, because what happens is your mana and stamina gets used up, it regenerates slowly, so you're basically using certain skills at certain times. It's basically not a game where you roll your entire face through the keyboard to use the skills. Next, I want to talk about potions. Potions are very, very, very valuable in this game. Whatever you bring along with you, once you use it, you can only refill it at the camp because the game doesn't have a healing spell in it at all. It's all about barriers and armor. Now, the armor buffs are done by warrior classes and are more permanent. They stay until they get hit, and you absorb the hit through the armor. The barrier are limited time and are done by mages. They can be buffed, however, to take even more hits, but they only last in limited time and then they slowly drain out. You want to use these rotations really carefully when you're battling enemies to stay up. And if your character does fall down, there are resurrection spells for mages to bring your character up. And yes, you can go over as the main controlled character and bring your character up. It takes a little bit of time, you hold a button down and you bring him back up to life. But they'll be at a low percentage of health. The only thing I didn't like about the AI in the game is the fact that the behavior for the characters that you can set is very limited and underwhelming. The fact that the other two previous games lets you do a lot more customization, and in this one you can only set, what type of potions they can use, who they follow, etc. So it's very limited. And unfortunately, I hope they extend more on this because it could have been a lot more. But it isn't too bad because if you set up the right tactics and you set up the right behavior, they usually act it out and use the skills you prefer them to use. So the no healing situation adds in a lot of strategy and depth, and also the way you set up parties doesn't have to revolve around the holy trinity with a mage caster at all times. You can actually have a group of warriors and some rogues, and the warriors can actually buff up the rogue too at the same time. Unfortunately, the rogues are the only classes that can't really protect themselves, except they can drop hate at any given time using subtlety. So the person who plays this game can come up with plans such as having a group of melees and a group of mages if they wanted to, and that would work as a group. I've done a group full of mages before, and I've done a group full of warriors before, and it works perfectly well with the game. The stats in the game are permanently adjusted depending on what class you have and what race you are. You can raise those stats through questing, you can raise those stats through items, and you can raise those stats to your trees. There are also quests that you can raise your elemental resistance. The way you do those is you collect these shards, you open doors, and when you open these doors, you get elemental resistance stats. Another way you can raise the stats is if you kill enemies, multiple enemies, you get these pieces from them, the valuable pieces, and if you don't sell it off, you turn it into the Inquisition, you can actually buff your damage against that certain type of enemy. For example, if you kill a lot of dragons, you collect a lot of pieces from them, you turn those in, you do more damage against dragons. As for the skill tree in the game, you can actually increase the skill tree through leveling, or you can actually find these amulets of powers throughout the world. And what it does is, for a certain character, you use the amulet, you'll be able to invest a point into your skill tree. So there's plenty of those. You can find it through your war parties, or you can find it around the world. And for a lot of people who are curious, yes, you can respec your skill tree anytime you want by buying an amulet. The amulet costs about 325 gold. You can buy these amulets at the blacksmith. There's a table, you buy the amulet, you put it on, and you reset your entire skill tree. So you can basically reset your tree anytime you want for certain fights if you feel like your tree is not going to work. So what it comes down to is that this game is a gear-based game. Some people might like this, some people might not. And let me assure you, there are plenty of gear in the world. There's these little star puzzles that you can do that open secret caves if you do them. There's plenty of gear through bosses that you fight in the game. And there's treasure chests full of gear. Or you can even craft your own gear. As you can see, the character I have in the game are all decked out. They are basically all found gears through missions, through different boss fights, through different areas where I looted the gear. Gray for normals, blue for magical, and purple for epics. The orange gears are actually crafted gears, so you can craft gear if you want to. But as you can see, you don't have to craft the gear if you don't want to. You can find plenty of purples and epics out there to put on your character. Which brings me into my next advice and also information about crafting. Crafting is very streamlined in this game and very easy to understand. It doesn't take a genius to craft gear. You need animal parts and also ores to actually craft the gear. Now, depending on what type of valuable metals or animal parts you have, you can actually craft certain stats, and it'll tell you directly what stats it is. If you put it into defense, you get certain stats into it. If you put it into offense, etc. You can also craft grips for weapons. You can craft certain other parts for weapons, and you can craft runes. Runes are basically found in caves, dungeons, and certain places where there is balefire nearby. When there is a balefire, there usually is a rune somewhere on the wall that you have to discover. That's where the schematics are. As for the items themselves, you can find schematics throughout the world through vendors. In Val Royale, there's a vendor for tier items, and then in the Hissing Waste, there's a merchant sitting somewhere in the canyons that sells tier 3 schematics. These schematics might be a little bit expensive, however, and the valuables might be a little bit hard to find, but there are ways to make it easier to find this, especially through your Inquisition perks. So if you're a person who likes to play the game where you farm materials and craft your own gear, you can do that, and it's really easy to do and it's fun. Now, a lot of you guys sitting out there are probably wondering, man, this guy got good gear. He's got, you know, all these items and stuff. He probably farmed really hard for it, the ores and the herbs and all that stuff. Absolutely not. I barely crafted items in this game. I crafted a few runes here and there from materials I found from the enemies. The crafted gear, I've crafted some grips here and there, but that's it. I barely crafted anything, and I barely farmed in this game. And that's all due to the Inquisition perks, which I'll show you right now what the Inquisition table is. So what is the Inquisition War Table? The Inquisition War Table is a different leveling system. When you do certain quests, when you find certain landmarks, destroying rifts in the game also give you Inquisition XP. When you discover things in the game, you level up the system. You can also do turn-in quests to your scouts at your camp to level up the system. You can repeat it, but what it does is basically each level you get, you earn 1 Inquisition point to the perks. The perks can be things such as buying better materials from vendors, getting sales and discount from vendors, selling items for more prices, earning more XP from certain things, and also carrying more potions, etc. There's all these type of perks that you can choose from and read to. If you read the perks and you choose wisely, you can basically choose certain perks where you don't even have to farm at all. You can sell items and make more money just to buy materials if you wanted to. That is what I did in the game. I looked at perks that were really attractive to me because I hate farming, and I basically look at the inventory spaces. I wanted to carry more items to sell. I looked at the selling to merchants for more percentage. I invested in that, and I also looked into rare sales from vendors and also rare materials to have vendors sell rare materials for me. I bought those items. I sold items to vendors. Whatever I killed from enemies, I looted, and then I started reselling to vendors for more. And from there, I bought herbs and ores and certain materials to craft or to turn into the Inquisition without even having to farm in this game at all. So if you want to play that route, you can. And to those people that said that you have to farm your entire game a crap load just to get anywhere, not true at all, because like I said before, I barely farmed in this game. The power points on the bottom right lets you progress in the game. There are certain main missions in the game where it requires maybe 20 to 40 power points. It really depends on the mission, and there are also certain areas in the game where it can unlock with power points. For example, if there's a bridge, you find the operation location, or if there's a mountain that's blocked, you find that operation location, you spend the power points, and you unlock yourself to new areas of the game if there is a landmark area for operation. Another thing is talking to NPCs unlock a lot of secret quests on the table. There's plenty of things to do on the table and send your troops out for. The thing about them is that every time you play the game, you want to keep an eye on that. If they're reporting back, you want to send them out again as much as possible because it's really important to access the war table as much as possible. Some of the quests can be discovered by talking to certain NPCs. You can actually go to the town and see if they show up there. Sometimes they show up and they reward you there personally. Sometimes, like I said before, it'll open up new dungeons and new quests that you've never seen before. I'm still on the table doing missions nonstop and discovering new things all the time through my playthrough. Now, most of the quests in this game is your typical run-of-the-mill questing where you fetch certain things, where you kill certain things, explore dungeons, etc. There's a lot of those, aside from the main missions where it's really unique and you do a lot of cool things in there and advance the story. But as for the questing goes, it's your fetch quest, etc. This is your typical RPG questing system. I think the questing system in this game could have been a lot better if they added more choices to the quest after completing it instead of just making it, oh, grab this, turn it in, etc. The questing system in the game, no matter how much you disguise it, no matter how much you flare it up or change it, is always going to be the same for an RPG. People are always wanting something done. People are always going to send you out there. They're going to send you on a mission of some sort, and they always want something, and you complete it for them and turn it in. That's what makes it an RPG genre. So if you find that boring, then I guess you're not into RPGs anymore, and you shouldn't play the genre because the upcoming games, RPGs, etc., are all going to have that system. Hopefully in the future, we'll see a better system out of this, a better disguise for it. Like, instead of just going from point X to point Y, they could have done, you know, point X to point Y spreads out, and you have a choice of going from point Y to, I don't know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and that would make the quest a lot more interesting, a lot more. Now that we covered the gameplay, I'm going to move on to talk about the maps in the game and the game world. The maps in the game are very large. It's not an open world RPG. You click on a map, you go there. They're not recycled materials anymore like in part 2, which is a great thing. Each of the maps are massive. There's tons of things to do on them, dungeons to find, quests to discover, places to explore, and also little mini buttons that will appear in the maps to give you little places with little quests you can do as you discover them. Aside from that, the game lets you travel in multiple ways. You can either traverse the maps on foot, or on a mount, or fast travel. With a mount, you can actually change your mount out aesthetically. You can choose from a variety of mounts, from Draco mounts to these moose-like mounts, exotic mounts, etc., to give you that aesthetic feeling that you're not always riding the same damn horse. As for the replayability of the game, there's tons of hours of replay. You can replay and pick different choices, choose a different race, or change your entire Dragon Age keep. The romance in the game, I'm not going to get into about because I'm not a huge fan of it, but the romance options are decent at best. I did do a romance option with Cassandra, and I thought it was pretty funny with my character. You can check out the YouTube video that I posted up. If you want more replayability, you can also log online and play the multiplayer of the game, which is completely different from the single player, where you travel with 3 other players and kill mobs, unlock new areas, and basically progress, unlocking perks and abilities and classes. It's different characters, different gameplay, different style, but also pretty fun. And they're going to add more maps to it later on. A lot of you guys out there I know has a problem with Dragon Age Inquisition because it's not like the rehash Origins where you click, where other games are like that already. It's a nice change for once. The action is fun, furious. It's kind of like an MMORPG if you want to compare it to that. But overall, it's a nice change, and it's different. It has a lot of improvements, and it has a lot of things that it can improve upon. But overall, the game is not that bad. There are certain crashes and problems on the technical side of the game, and Origins has specifically said that they are fixing right now as we speak. Hopefully we'll see a patch come out pretty soon that fixes DX crash errors, maybe the FPS during cutscenes, because that's pretty annoying and ruins immersion. But overall, the game is very immersive, it's very large, it's got a lot of things to do, and you'll spend hours and hours playing this game. The game is probably a nice addition to the series, and hopefully we'll see a better sequel come out of it. That's as much as I can tell you about the game, guys. I hope that you enjoy the game. If you're playing it right now or plan to get the game, wait for it a little bit if you want to wait for patches to fix up some of the problems. But overall, the game itself is really fun to play, and as a PC player, I can't wait to see what kind of mods people are kind of come up with for this game. It's going to be pretty amazing. If you enjoy the game, or if you don't enjoy the game, hey, that's all up to you, man. But overall, the game itself has been a pretty epic experience. I've sunk plenty of hours into this game, and I plan to sink another maybe 100 hours on Nightmare again and choose different classes and do a playthrough on YouTube. So check out my videos, and remember, guys, to play the game for yourself, decide for yourself, and game on.
But is it hero or murderer? It's so hard to tell.
Who are you?
Call me Imshale.
You're a demon.
Ahem. Choice spirit.
Talky ones. I hate the talky ones.
Wait. These are your friends? They're very violent. It's worrying. True to my name, I will show you that you have a choice. It doesn't always have to end in blood.
Talk.
Oh, you really shouldn't talk to these things, darling.
Simple. We don't fight, and I grant you power. Shower you with riches. Or maybe virgins. Your pick. Then we all live happily ever after. Well, not all of us, but who's counting?
Well, I'd like to be showered with virgins.
I should really stop offering virgins. Everyone always chooses them, and I can never find any. How about a rune of legend, inscribed by the gods, radiating forgotten magic, blah, blah, blah.
No. You die, demon.
Alpha, choice, spirit.